CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is Global Business.
Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Jamie Owen.
And I'm Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. Trade, technology and Taiwan. Presidents Xi Jinping and Joe Biden discuss areas of common interest and avoiding conflict.
Our other headlines: gas prices in Europe surge after Germany's regulator suspends approval of Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Polish troops push back migrants with water cannon as the crisis on the border with Belarus continues.
And Greek hospitality workers stage a 24-hour strike over restrictions placed on unvaccinated customers. Xi Jinping and Joe Biden have held their most extensive direct talks since the US president took office in January.
During a 3.5-hour-long video call, the two leaders discussed key issues that have strained diplomatic ties: trade, technology and the thorny issue of regional security, particularly around Taiwan. Here's Li Jianhua with the story of the summit.
The meeting lasted for around 3 hours. It opened with two presidents extending a warm greeting. Xi Jinping said China is ready to move relations forward in a positive direction.
As the world's two largest economies and permanent members of the UN Security Council, China and the U.S. need to increase communication and cooperation, each run their domestic affairs well, and at the same time, shoulder their share of international responsibilities and work together to advance the noble cause of world peace and development.
For his part, Biden said they need to establish common-sense guardrail.
And I look forward to a candid and forthright discussions like all the discussions we've had thus far. It seems to me our responsibility as leaders of China and the United States to ensure that the competition between our countries does not veer into conflict, whether intended or unintended.
The press was allowed to observe the opening of the summit before the leaders continued speaking privately. Several thorny issues were expected to top the agenda, including Taiwan and the trade war.
Their meeting is mainly to control the direction of U.S.-China relations. There have been several rounds of talks before this. Biden is faced with external and internal problems. The immediate challenge is his approval rating is falling. He also needs to implement the bipartisan infrastructure bill. The U.S. may need China's help as it pursues an expansionary fiscal policy and industrial structure reform.
The meeting comes amid growing tensions over Taiwan, a red line for China. Experts say the U.S. is using the island as a tool to contain China.
As Beijing has made clear, the Taiwan issue really threatens both sides making progress on other fronts, but it's a key element in America's anti-China containment strategy, and it won't be abandoned easily.
Despite differences, the two sides have been working together in areas of common interest, including fighting climate change and the pandemic. At the COP26 climate summit this month, they issued a joint statement to try to lower carbon emissions. Based on previous high-level talks over the past year, the Biden administration did take some hardline stances against China. But what's different is China has been hitting back hard this year, urging the U.S. to treat China with equality. Tensions certainly remain, but at least the two countries are willing to talk. Li Jianhua, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, China's foreign ministry said the meeting between President Xi and Biden was candid and constructive, but stressed there are principles to follow if the world's two big powers want relations back on track.
For the two countries to get along in the new era, 3 principles must be followed. First, mutual respect. The two countries need to respect each other's social systems and development paths, respect each other's core interests and major concerns. Second, peaceful coexistence. No conflict and no confrontation is a line that both sides must hold. Third, win-win cooperation. The world is big enough for the two countries to develop individually and jointly. The right thing to do is to choose mutual benefit over zero-sum games.
Let's get the United States perspective on this meeting and talk to Caroline Malone in Washington. So, Caroline, what's been the reaction where you are? Has the summit achieved what it set out to do?
Well, look, this was the two leaders of the largest economies in the world, and as you've noted, they talked for more than 3 hours. So that's an achievement in itself, especially noting that this is the first virtual summit in the last 10 months since Biden became president. There was a friendly tone, it was candid, and they didn't shy away from some really serious subjects that were covered. Biden even used the phrase old friend at some points to talk with Xi. And this has been a time of increased tensions between the two, so it is really important that the two talked. I mean, a senior Biden administration official had even said that it was respectful, straightforward, and it was an open dialogue. And they've both noted the importance of those bilateral communications. She even said that there should be more of it. On the other hand, expectations were low going into the talks. The White House had said there would be no joint statement. There wasn't a joint statement. And the two leaders clearly do have a difference of opinion on some really important matters, particularly military drills in the South China Sea. There's concern over conflict potentially there. And Biden and Xi did engage in extended discussions about Indo-Pacific tensions, according to the White House. Xinhua has quoted Xi as saying that any move towards Taiwan independence that crosses China's red line, they'll have to take decisive measures. So really people both being really candid there in their messaging. In the White House readout, Biden has said the importance of a free and open Indo-Pacific is something that he would like to strengthen, particularly the safe overflight of the region's prosperity. However, he has assured that the US remains committed to the one China policy. That's an important message there to Beijing. So the leaders didn't shy away from those important topics, and that in itself could be seen as a positive outcome.
So, Caroline, can we expect a thaw in relations after this?
Well, in a way, the fact that they did have these direct talks is somewhat of a thaw in relations. I mean, let's not forget the type of tensions they were dealing with previously with the previous president, Donald Trump, who launched that trade war against China in 2018. Some dramatic measures put into place there that, of course, include tariffs. And those continue to affect both Chinese and US businesses, and that hasn't changed. I mean, previous trade talks between the US and China before the summit, US officials expressed frustration by the lack of substantive engagement, they said, from Beijing. The September call between Biden and Xi, which was just a call, and now this summit, was actually initiated from the US side. And domestically, we have to remember that the US, and of course globally, there is rising inflation. The US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said previously at the beginning of November that actually tariffs could be an added cost to goods, and that is somewhat contributing to inflation. So messaging there, potentially taking off tariffs, could be good for the economy. However, Biden has signalled for now that he's not ready to lift them until China makes more commitments, particularly from a deal made back in February 2020. Xi, on the other hand, has made some concessions, saying he'd like to make it easier for US business people to travel to China, particularly at the moment during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that could promote US-China trade relations and help both actually countries' economies recover. So from an academic point of view, it is really in the interests of both nations to coexist without conflict and protect their own interests. Climate change, of course, is one area that we've seen there are mutual interests. But on other matters, even though they don't agree, they can coexist. And at least now there is this formal and open communication between the two leaders of the countries.
Caroline Malone in Washington, thank you.
Well, David Mann is an investment manager with more than 3 decades of experience in China. He told me that relations between Washington and Beijing have never been more difficult.
The China-America relationship has never been in a worse place. Perhaps let's take the point of China's opening in 1978 under Deng Xiaoping. And then there was an extraordinary period of partnership between the US and China, which brought prosperity to the world. It certainly had massive impact on Asia. And both countries had extremely strong periods of economic growth and a positive globalism. This is unraveling and will go on unraveling, I think, for the period of Biden's presidency. He's altered little in terms of the trade war positions or the bellicose language, the very harsh language that is being used in judging China. I've just returned from Yunnan province involved with agricultural projects. The level of prosperity, of activity in these places is extraordinary. So the grassroots of the economy in China is very strong. It's a domestic economy. It doesn't depend on the US as much as it once did.
What impact do you think this animosity in the relationship between the United States and China has had on the global economy?
In a period of somewhat insecurity, there is too much pressure, too much political pressure. The Australian economy is really facing difficult times. Oddly enough, Australian beef is now being banned in China, or it's been blockaded, as is wine. The political dispute is very strong. And Australia's doing this on behalf of America to show its alliance to America. Meanwhile, American beef is pouring into the market. There's no inhibition in terms of the goods that are outside the tariffs of the trade war. So it's a very unbalanced situation. I think there'll be many casualties amongst smaller and medium-sized countries because of the struggle between America and China.
You watched this presidential meeting. What are your key takeaways from both sides?
I think you have two reasonable people, which is a good thing at a personal level. I think Xi is a much more deep-thinking, varied person than the West casts him as. He knows people well. He knows Biden. I think Biden is struggling. I think the problems that people anticipated of his age showed. In a sense, he's stating things, not speaking from himself, not a man who's really exploring ideas that some of his predecessors, like an Obama, would have done. So there's a woodenness and a preparedness to him that I think is concerning. So in a sense, Xi Jinping makes many decisions for China and has great influence on domestic policy and foreign policy. Biden works in a very divided, fractious environment in Washington. And it's very hard for the man himself to represent much except the contradiction that is Washington today. So I sense that in the conversation. I don't think anything was said that's profound, but it is profound they're talking. And that's always a good sign. And as long as they go on having summits like this, even though they are virtual, that is a good sign. Something may come of that.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Mourners for a man they never knew. A funeral in Poland for a teenage Syrian who died trying to cross the EU's border.
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to The Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more...
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. Just a reminder that CGTN is available to watch for free on all the major digital platforms. On Smart TV or online on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app, and in the UK on Freeview.
Germany has paused the approval process for the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. The second largest line between Russia and Germany was completed in September, but needs regulatory approval before it can transport gas. The decision sent wholesale gas prices to 3-week highs. Let's talk to our correspondent Trent Murray in Berlin. Trent, why has this happened? Do we know?
Well, Jamie, this is yet another setback for the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline. As you mentioned, this long-awaited project was set to open following that regulatory approval, and it would more than double the amount of gas coming from Russia directly into Germany. But Germany's energy regulator says it is not ready to give that seal of approval yet with its regulation process. It says that it is unable to certify the project because it's not an independent operator, given that the company is based in Switzerland and not Germany. So effectively, this is a legal technicality. Of course, German bureaucracy has quite a reputation across Europe, and this is less of a political decision but more of one of the independent regulator really just saying that it wants Nord Stream 2 to get its books in order, get its paperwork correctly filed, and to put the holding company that will operate the project here in Germany under German law rather than in neighbouring Switzerland. But of course, any decision around Nord Stream 2 was always going to be closely watched, given the history of this project. It only had sanctions lifted from it by the United States in recent months because the long-held concern in neighbouring European countries is that this project could increase Moscow's influence in Europe's delicate energy market. As I say, this decision less involved in the politics of the project, but needless to say, it has drawn quite a bit of attention, not just here in Berlin and Moscow, but also across Europe.
And Trent, what of the reaction? Prices have absolutely leapt, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. As soon as this news was released, gas futures surged almost 10%. Obviously, the market very jittery at the moment, given where things are with supply chain bottlenecks and gas shortages across much of Europe. Already, investors were fearful that there could be shortages over the winter, some even warning of possible rolling blackouts in Europe if we do see a particularly cold winter. So this news was not received well by the market. Things are starting to stabilise a little bit now, but Russia and Gazprom have long said that the quicker Nord Stream 2 can get approved, the faster they can try and pump more gas into Europe. On one hand, Germany says that's why it's working on trying to get through this approval process quickly, but on the other, some say it is vindication to the idea that Russian President Vladimir Putin and Gazprom could use this project to try and strong-arm European capitals into following its will. It's one to watch. We will have to see whether the company responds by trying to bring that holding company here into Germany.
Trent Murray in Berlin, thank you very much.
Poland's security services have used a water cannon on migrants after they threw rocks at them from across the border. Later this week, Iraq will begin to repatriate hundreds of its citizens who are part of a group of thousands trapped between Belarus and Poland. They've spent weeks trying to enter the European Union. The EU blames Belarus for creating a humanitarian crisis on the border, claims it denies. CGTN's Alyosha Milenkovic reports.
With police sirens and lights, this vehicle is speeding through the checkpoint toward the border. It's just one of the dozens we've seen in less than an hour on this stretch of the road.
This is the closest we can get to the Polish border with Belarus. Behind me is the Polish police and military checkpoint, beyond which only authorized security personnel and people who actually live in Kuźnica are allowed. We are just 3 kilometers from the worst pressure point at the border.
Police turned back everyone else. A military helicopter in the distance is also heading toward the border. Polish authorities say they're sending reinforcements to the Kuźnica area.
We expect a forceful attempt to cross the border. At the moment, we have directed all the forces we could direct there. These are, of course, officers of the border guard, and of course, we are supported by soldiers and police officers. This section of the border is also patrolled by a police helicopter.
At dusk, we arrived at the nearby village of Bohoniki. It's one of the last remaining Muslim Tatar communities in this part of Poland. A handful of locals have gathered here to bury a Syrian migrant who drowned in the Bug River when he tried to cross from Belarus.
What is happening right now on the Polish-Belarusian border is simply a tragedy. Unfortunately, the refugees there have terrible conditions. That's the worst side of all this. I hope they will receive help in some way, that countries agree on how to do it, how to help them, whether they be taken to Germany or taken back to their own countries.
19-year Ahmed Al-Hassan didn't reach Germany, nor did he have a chance to go back home to Syria. Another migrant who had better luck getting to Germany is also there, on a video phone call with Ahmed's family. A heartbreaking scene, but hardly the last one in this sad story at the Polish-Belarus border. Aljoša Milenković, CGTN, Kuźnica.
The European Union is considering the launch of a joint military force of up to 5,000 troops by 2025, which would be deployed to crisis areas. The EU's plan comes as Russia intensifies its military presence on the Ukrainian border. Well, let's talk now to CGTN's Giles Gibson, who's following the EU defence ministers' meeting in Brussels. So, Giles, what did discussions focus on?
Well, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Josep Borrell, gave a press conference at the end of this meeting saying that the EU's adversaries are using hybrid tactics in which everything is being weaponized. For example, the EU has accused Belarus of channeling migrants towards its eastern frontiers, most importantly on the border between Poland and Belarus. That, of course, is an accusation that the Belarusian president Alexander Lukashenko has denied. We also saw Josep Borrell talking about how cyberspace and outer space would be the new battlefields of future wars. And as we see the EU trying to expand its military capabilities, we're also seeing an effort to smooth over any potential tensions with NATO, which of course also has its headquarters here in Brussels and has had that historical role in protecting the West from exterior threats. Josep Borrell in this press conference just a few minutes ago saying that any new joint force the EU is going to set up will be in partnership with NATO, not duplicating any of its efforts.
And Giles, this idea of a joint military force, how close is the EU to making that happen?
Well, it has a proposed name. The EU is saying that it will be called the Rapid Deployment Capacity, that it will have up to 5,000 troops at its disposal. This is all part of what Josep Borrell describes as the EU trying to make decisions faster and also trying to respond to events around the world much faster as well. The overall vision for the EU's new defence strategy is known as the Strategic Compass, and the idea is to dot the I's and cross the T's in the next 4 or 5 months or so, to get this document nailed down by March of 2022, when there will be an EU leaders summit. This entire discussion about expanding the EU's military capabilities has really been reignited by the chaotic scenes that we saw in Kabul over the summer as Western troops and Western diplomats pulled out of Afghanistan. The EU has been saying ever since then that they need to be able to respond faster and also just be less reliant on the United States for that sort of an operation in future.
Giles Gibson in Brussels, thank you.
A large migrant camp near Dunkirk has been demolished by French police. On Tuesday, officers began evacuating the camp at Grasson, which housed more than 1,500 migrants and refugees. Officials said 13 suspected people smugglers were arrested. On Monday, the French and British Interior Ministers met to discuss increasing efforts to stop migrants crossing the English Channel into the UK.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. UK jobs figures show record vacancies, so why are we all quitting our jobs? I may be back after the break.
It's the first day in Germany that vaccination centers like this one are offering a third jab.
There are fears there could be a fifth wave of COVID-19 cases.
Market watchers have a keen eye on infection rates,
Safety and efficacy of COVID-19 shots.
France closed schools in the first lockdown in spring last year.
France has been a leader in vaccinating youngsters.
If a spike necessitates another lockdown.
Italy is now close to reaching its target of immunising 80% of the population over the age of 12.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
The agreement is signed. But what is the real deal now the UK has left the EU? For trade, for business, for the city, for ordinary people. Make sense of Brexit with CGTN.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe with Jamie Owen and Robin Dwyer. Our top stories: trade, technology and Taiwan. President Xi Jinping and Joe Biden discuss areas of common interest and avoiding conflict.
Gas prices in Europe surge after Germany's regulator suspends approval of Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
And Polish troops push back migrants with water cannon as the crisis on the border with Belarus continues.
US President Joe Biden has signed a historic $1 trillion spending bill into law. The legislation aims to provide much-needed investment on a wide range of infrastructure and fulfills a key promise from Biden during his presidential campaign. But it took the support of some Republicans to get it over the line. Jim Spellman reports.
President Biden is underwater in the polls and desperately needs a political win. He hopes signing the infrastructure bill into law will help turn the tide.
The measure passed the Senate and the House with bipartisan support. The $1 trillion+ infrastructure package funds roads, bridges, mass transit, clean water, and broadband expansion.
The infrastructure bill is the first part of President Biden's major legislative push.
The other is the so-called Build Back Better social spending package. It extends a child tax credit, provides for universal preschool, and incentivizes efforts to limit climate change.
President Biden and his administration have been working to sell these bills to the American public in the face of inflation, supply chain delays, and employment concerns.
Because if we do it right, we know what it will mean. We know what it will mean. It'll create millions of new jobs, will grow the economy, and will win the world world economic competition that we're engaged in the second quarter of the 21st century with China and many other countries around the world.
But Democrats have been at war with themselves over how to get these items passed and how expansive they should be. The Build Back Better package began at $3.5 trillion and has been whittled down to about $1.75 trillion.
Democrats in the House of Representatives hope to pass that bill in the next week or so. It will then move to the Senate, where it will likely be pared down to win approval from two conservative Democratic senators who have raised concerns about the price. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
UK job numbers show British employers added more workers to their payrolls in October, potentially easing concerns about the risks of raising interest rates. Let's get more on the story with Juliet Mann. Juliet.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, these numbers are the first since the end of the UK's pandemic job retention scheme, known as furlough, came to an end. So how's the economy holding up? Well, it looks like jobs disaster has been averted. UK unemployment has fallen further than expected. The number of employees on company payrolls rose by 160,000 to 29.3 million. That's despite 1.1 million people still being on furlough last month. And the unemployment rate fell to 4.3% in the 3 months to September. That's ever so slightly more than expected and quite near its pre-pandemic level. Now, there might be some distortion there if people were made redundant at the end of furlough but still appear as in work in the data for a few further months while they work out their notice. Job vacancies, now these hit record highs. Look at that, at 1.17 million in the 3 months to October. So overall, it looks like the UK labour market has escaped the end of the furlough scheme relatively unharmed. But inflation is still a concern. Well, let's talk to Hilary Ingham, who's a senior lecturer in economics at Lancaster University. Good to see you again, Hilary. No, I can't quite work this out. This data, is it good news or not?
I think overall it is good news. I mean, the unemployment figure has actually fallen slightly from the last figure we had. And I mean, Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, he actually made a speech yesterday and he said he actually wanted to see what these figures were because these were the important ones. As you said, these are the first figures that come after the end of the furlough scheme. And although you are quite right that there will be some workers who are still on payroll because they are working out their redundancy period, there have been independent business surveys that suggest there's very few of them. So it doesn't look like that's going to put a big spike in the unemployment figures anytime soon. So I think overall, yes, it's good news.
So crisis averted. Look, COVID plays a big part, but that grey cloud of Brexit and the Brexit talks, that's still looming, isn't it?
Yes, well, I mean, as you noted, we've got record number of vacancies and there are shortages. You know, we know about the hospitality sector, the HGV sector has also received a lot of attention, and there are vacancies in manufacturing and construction. So there are lots of areas of the economy where employers are looking for workers. And what we have seen is that we have actually seen wages going up. So down the road, there is a possibility that there are going to have to be movements in the interest rate.
That's what I wanted to ask you about next, because if we look around Europe, there has been some standout data. But when you then look at new lockdowns and the language on inflation, you know, how cautious do central banks need to be in the short term?
Yes, well, I think at the last meeting of the UK Monetary Policy Committee, it was a 7-2 vote, you know, not to raise interest rates. So that was quite decisive, really. I think what the bank is interested in is whether this inflation is transitory. Is it something we're going to see in the short term and then it's going to fall back down closer to the level they're aiming for, or is it going to remain? And of course, the problem with this wage growth is that wage growth fuels inflationary pressures in the economy. So the longer this wage growth persists, the more likely it is that we are going to see UK interest rates increasing.
And prices are going up. It's not just fuel and energy, household energy, food as well. And all of these prices going up. If you want to have some home renovations done, the cost of labour, the cost of those materials are all going up. Let's talk about the future of work, because there's a real buzz at the moment, isn't there, about the great resignation, that the notion of career wobbles, of people thinking, right, we're going to start again rather than sticking it out. Do you think that the numbers that are out are really reflecting that trend?
Well, I think what's happened, I mean, it's quite right that the number of job-to-job transitions is high at the minute, and they're not driven by people losing their jobs. They're actually driven by people resigning. And I think what the pandemic has done in some cases is people have actually rethought what they want their future career plans to be. And then, I mean, the other sort of thing you've got going on in the UK at this very moment in time, of course, is that it's no longer possible to work in the social care sector if you're not double vaccinated. So there you've got people who are leaving their jobs. They're going to have to find something else because they're not prepared to accept one of the conditions of employment. But there is an awful lot of labour mobility, people moving from one job to another.
And perhaps
you know, whether that is going to continue in the future or whether it is a sort of short-term repercussion of the pandemic is yet to be seen. I suspect it is a short-term phenomenon.
Well, I hope it's a long-term phenomenon. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much, Hilary Ingham at Lancaster University. So investors potentially still a little bit on edge. Traders, though, keeping a close eye, Jamie and Robin, on the Fed speak that's coming out later on this afternoon.
Thank you, Juliet. China's port city of Dalian in the northeast of the country is battling a resurgence of COVID-19 caused by the highly transmissible Delta variant. Nearly 300 people have been infected in 10 days. CGTN's Guan Yang reports.
Dalian is seeing a slowing upward trend in its current COVID-19 resurgence. For locals, Tuesday's news shows a promising sign, with only 7 confirmed cases reported. Officials from the National Health Commission said the outbreak is entering a stable period, while there may still be a small number of sporadic cases found in quarantine facilities.
Right behind me is one of the communities in Ganjing district where confirmed cases were reported. As you can see, the whole area is under lockdown. While the third round of nucleic acid test is underway, the job at hand is to mitigate the spread of the virus to other districts.
We've locked down 3 residential compounds in Ganjing district, and a total of over 200,000 people are under home quarantine. 3 rounds of PCR testing have been conducted, and the 4th round is underway.
This round of infection started from an employee at a cold chain storage facility in Zhuanghe at the beginning of the month. It has spread locally within families, companies, and schools. Currently, there are nearly 200 centralized isolation facilities, over 22,000 people under quarantine in the city of Zhuanghe.
The preliminary investigation shows that the outbreak on our campuses first originated from an infected staffer. To date, over 3,000 staff and students from the university town have been transferred to quarantine facilities. The work of tracing close contacts of the confirmed cases continues.
Local authorities are ramping up efforts on epidemic control. Daily necessities and essential quarantine items are being prepared for the lockdown university town.
400 people from local governments and communities have been working around the clock to help carry out disinfection as well as deliver food and other essentials to the students on the campuses.
Although the source of this outbreak is yet to be confirmed, current information shows a strong link with the cold chain industry. Nearly 70% of imported cold chain products enter China through Dalian. Experts say proper and strict measures must be adopted in port cities like Dalian to hold the impact of infections to the minimum. Guan Yang, CGTN, Dalian.
Increasing COVID infections in Germany mean the world-famous Munich Christmas market will not go ahead as planned this year. Bavarian officials announced the festival's cancellation today, while authorities across Germany are mulling similar moves and new restrictions. Ryan Thompson reports now from Frankfurt.
Officials have been warning for weeks that Germany is about to enter another severe wave of the pandemic. The country continues to set new records for the number of infections recorded in a single day, and the amount of active cases of COVID-19 in the country right now is at an all-time high. Officials say many of those cases are milder, but as the virus spreads quicker than before, there will soon be increased pressure on intensive care units. Those beds are already at a 90% occupancy rate nationwide, and it's being felt in the hardest hit areas like Saxony and Bavaria. So far, discussions about new restrictions remain just that, discussions, though large-scale events are being cancelled by local authorities. That includes the world-famous Munich Christmas market, which was scheduled to return this year after a hiatus in 2020. In Berlin, leaders have not pulled the trigger on any sweeping nationwide changes to regulations, but all this comes as the main SDP party, led by Olaf Scholz, continues its coalition talks with the Greens and Liberal Free Democrats. The chancellor in waiting has committed to ending the emergency pandemic powers later this month, but also promised to implement drastic rules for those who are not vaccinated. That could end access to restaurants, museums, and hairdressers for those who have yet to get the jab. But perhaps the most significant impact of this proposed measure would be the requirement to have a negative COVID-19 test if you are unvaccinated in order to board a bus or train. Ryan Thompson, CGTN, Frankfurt.
Hospitality workers in Greece are staging a 24-hour strike over restrictions put on people who are unvaccinated.
Bars, restaurants and cafes say business has fallen significantly since the new measures came into force on the 6th of November. But Greek health officials want tighter restrictions to limit rising infections. CGTN's Evangelos Ipsas reports now from Athens.
Tensions are rising on the street of Athens. Business owners and workers are angry at restrictions they say are harming their livelihoods. Many restaurants, cafes and bars are closed across the country as union leaders call a 24-hour strike. Coffee shop owner Lisa Meneretzi says the measures are hard to enforce.
Honestly, I cannot be checking certificates like I'm a police officer. Most people are fine and don't get bothered, but some are really rude and even swear at me. It's mainly the anti-vaxxers, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. And of course, there's the financial impact. I've owned this place for over 30 years, I have 10 employees, and this is the first time I'm cutting salaries.
The new rules were introduced last Saturday to fight a spike in coronavirus infections. They mainly target unvaccinated people, restricting entry to retail stores, banks, hair salons, and outdoor cafes and restaurants. Customers must present either a fully vaccination certificate, a negative test results, or a certificate showing they've recovered from COVID-19 within the last 6 months. Restaurant owners and union leaders say this has led to a drastic reduction in business.
This is already a very difficult time for us. The measures taken by the government are affecting our customer numbers. We've been experiencing this for about 10 days now. We've seen a reduction in the turnover of between 40 and 60%. It's devastating.
According to the Hellenic Statistical Authority, since the beginning of the pandemic, more than 2,000 businesses have shut down and thousands have lost their jobs. So in order for more to avoid going down the same path, the protesters behind me are demanding exemption from municipal taxes, subsidies for energy and rent, plus a tax cut from 24% to 6%. Union leaders and business owners see that the government has turned their backs on them. But the Minister for Development disagrees.
We are helping small businesses, and this is the reason Greece had the biggest reduce of unemployment in Eurozone area during the pandemic. If the government hasn't helped the small businesses, now the unemployment would be exploded. So we are doing a good job, and we will continue to do a good job in good faith with good people and professionals that we respect.
Greece is falling behind other European nations with only 61.1% of its population fully vaccinated. While some feel the latest measures are necessary to get the country moving in the right direction, for others, it's making the prospect of a long and hard winter even worse.
In the Czech Republic, the number of daily COVID infections has topped 10,000 for the fifth time in a week. The country reported just over 11,500 new cases, over 2,000 more than a week ago, and one of the highest daily totals since March. Hospitalizations are also on the rise.
At least 3 people have died after twin suicide bomb blasts in Uganda's capital, Kampala. The first went off near the central police station, while the second saw 2 suicide bombers on a motorbike target an area near the parliament around 30 minutes later. No group has yet claimed responsibility.
Russia has confirmed it tested an anti-satellite space weapon by blowing up one of its own satellites, but denied claims from the United States that it posed a danger. Washington had condemned Monday's test as reckless and dangerous, saying the crew of the International Space Station had been forced to seek shelter. US officials said the debris would pose a hazard for years to come.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, welcome to the metaverse, the Silicon Valley pioneers for whom reality is increasingly virtual.
Hello, I'm Stephen Cole. What's on your agenda this week? I know when it comes to news, you're sport for choice. So many channels, so many opinions. But it's time to step off the news roundabout, time to cut out the noise, get to the heart of the real story with a talk show with a difference. I'll be finding out what the world is thinking by talking to the global decision makers and helping you set your own news agenda. Remember, we don't just report the news, we set the agenda.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
Roger,
we can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come, and this idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we're trying to save the world.
Awesome! We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to the Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. Cricket in England is riddled with racism. That claim was made during a tearful appearance by former Yorkshire cricketer Azim Rafiq before a parliamentary committee.
The player, who's of Pakistani descent, spoke of inhuman treatment while he was at Yorkshire County Cricket Club and catalogued a damning culture of racism. Major sponsors have now abandoned the club, and the scandal has cost Yorkshire the right to host England internationals.
Pretty early on, me and other people from Asian background
There was comments such as, "You lot sit over there near the toilets," elephant washers, the word "he" was used constantly. I should have never ever been treated the way I got treated. When I spoke, I should have been listened to, but Yorkshire County Cricket Club and the game as a whole really has a problem in listening to the victim, and it's been gaslighting, it's been but there is no but to racism. There is no two sides to a story when it comes to racism.
When Facebook changed its name to Meta, it drew attention and investment into what's known as the metaverse. It's about a shared space of virtual reality-driven, interconnected world. CGTN's Mark New reports now from the Augmented World Expo.
Carving out a space in your own virtual world is what the Augmented World Expo in Silicon Valley is all about. While big, powerful headsets are around every corner, HTC has rolled out a sleeker, more portable connected eyewear, the Vive Flow, complete with washable parts and adjustable lenses.
Just by making it compact, it opens up a lot more accessibility options to people. It's not intimidating to folks who, for example, have seen headsets that have a strap around the back or over the top.
Even as virtual avatars become more and more realistic, the eyes can often appear lifeless. That's why Viewpoint System is using its technology to help avatar eyes become more animated. Its cameras fit in this tiny device, transferring valuable data in real time that tracks precisely where one is looking.
The eyes are the mirror of the soul, meaning your eyes give away a lot of information, a lot of emotion. If we can develop our technology to the level that we understand what you feel while looking at something, and to understand what's interesting for you, what's interesting for me or anyone else out there, and then provide you exactly with only that information you're interested in.
One of the growing fields for virtual and augmented applications is medicine, and particularly how to train to become a surgeon. How do I do that? Well, I'm here with Fundamental Surgery. Let's give it a try.
Feel free to just poke the prod around. You don't have to play by the rules in this particular stage.
Oh, wow. Immediately, I push this down a little bit, touch the skin, and I can feel it sort of bounce back. I'm performing a hip replacement surgery where I can actually feel the instrument grind away the bone spurs. My heart rate is picking up a little bit because I don't want to mess up this surgery. It feels so real.
That's the beauty of VR, is that you can't hurt the patient.
Thank goodness.
Kinesthetic haptics, so this is kind of force feedback, weight resistance, pressure. You can get real subtlety, which gives you the ability to really get that kind of pre-human competence, where you are actually learning what it feels like to do it right and do it wrong, and practice that again and again.
The platform also allows me to join an operating room and collaborate with other virtual surgeons around the world.
We can basically collapse time and space and put people together in a way that's never been possible before. Really important during the last couple of years with the pandemic, so allowing me to step into an operating room when I couldn't physically go in there.
Technologists we spoke to say challenges with computing power, display technology, and connectivity still hold back the expansion of the metaverse. It's still early days for metaverse companies that are working to merge the physical and virtual into a seamless experience that looks and feels real. Mark New, CGTN, Santa Clara, California.
The fashion industry is responsible for up to 1/10 of global carbon emissions, according to the United Nations.
In South Africa, there's a pressing need to divert fabric waste from landfill. One startup in Cape Town is taking up the mammoth task by collecting waste and recycling it into new textiles. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Every second, the equivalent of a rubbish truckload of clothes is burnt or buried in a landfill. The global fast fashion industry generates around 90 million tons of waste annually, of which only 1% is recycled. These young entrepreneurs in South Africa have chosen to tackle textile recycling.
My name is Esetu Tenga. I am the co-founder and the CEO of Rewoven.
My name is Tsepo, surname is Bengu. I'm here at Rewoven as a co-founder and the Chief Operations Officer.
One of the biggest conversations right now is about climate change. It's about jobs, especially in the developing South. So we need to reimagine the post-COVID context to be a lot more inclusive, to be a lot more kinder to the environment because we don't have time, but also to create jobs and to create sustainable development.
When it comes to waste and the perception around waste, I think for a long time it's been looked at as something you want to keep out of your eyes and not really see. But I think with, climate change and how the world is shifting towards a more shared economy, we're starting to have to look at waste and see it as an opportunity.
Rewoven has just received a boost to expand its activities after winning $81,000 bonus from the Mandela Rhodes Foundation.
The prize is going to be very helpful. Right now, we're in a position where we're still in phase one, where we're collecting the textile waste, we're diverting it from landfill, and we're kind of facilitating it into different recycling loops. Yet our goal is to for us to be the ones who manufacture it locally. And so that part of that money will kind of accelerate that pace of us being able to do that, growing the team.
So how the process works is we provide on-site waste sorting service for our large manufacturers, whereby we have a team on site who work through the production waste that comes off the floor. It's then brought in and put into a bale press, where it's pressed and compacted for it to be stored and then sold off to consumers, or our customers who use it in their production process currently.
When it comes to green economy and circular economy, there's a lot of opportunities in the future of circular economy.
Currently we have a small team of 4, but we hope to continue to impact not only the people that we employ directly, but to impact the industry really through creating jobs both directly for ourselves as a business, but also indirectly through facilitating this growth of a new market that people can really tap into.
Rewoven's future is green and bright, and it's actively contributing to environmentally sustainable lifestyles. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town.
And finally, to the western beaches of Senegal, popular with tourists and sea turtles who use them as nesting grounds. Human visitor numbers fell during the pandemic, and the turtles have taken advantage, with the dark, empty beaches perfect for nesting. Their numbers have ballooned, and many turtles have come back again this year.
The headlines again. Trade, technology and Taiwan. President Xi Jinping and Joe Biden discuss areas of common interest and avoiding conflict.
Gas prices in Europe surge after Germany's regulator suspends approval of Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Polish troops push back migrants with water cannon as the crisis on the border with Belarus continues.
And one more piece of news just in. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has set out plans to ban serving members of Parliament from working as paid consultants.
His announcement came just as the Labour opposition leader, Keir Starmer, was introducing proposals for a wider ban on lawmakers taking second jobs, the subject of controversy in the UK in recent weeks.
Well, that's it for Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching.
More on all of our stories at europe.cgtn.com, and do follow CGTN Europe on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.
We're on smart TV apps, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app, and in the UK on Freeview.
Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.